The family reunion was supposed to be peaceful. A big house in New Jersey, warm lights, laughter, and forced smiles. I hadn't seen most of my relatives in years, and honestly, I was fine with that. Everyone was gathered in the living room when Uncle David walked in. He was confident, loud, and always enjoyed making others uncomfortable. He glanced at me, smiled slowly, and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "So, how's life in that $1.3 million house you purchased?" The room went silent. My sister stopped scrolling through her vacation photos. My father froze mid-sentence. My mother's face turned pale. "What house?" my mom whispered, her voice shaking. I said nothing. I calmly took a sip of my wine and looked straight ahead. Uncle David chuckled. "I heard you've been doing very well lately. Real estate, investments, big money." Everyone stared at me now. Some curious. Some jealous. Some nervous. The truth was, my family didn't know anything about my life anymore. Years ago, when I struggled, no one helped. When I worked late nights, they laughed. When I failed, they judged. So I stopped explaining. I smiled politely and said, "Let's not talk business at dinner." But Uncle David wasn't done. "Oh, come on," he said. "Family should know these things." That's when I realized. This wasn't curiosity. This was an attack. And for the first time in years, I decided I wouldn't stay silent anymore. Uncle David leaned back on the couch, enjoying the tension he had created. He loved being the center of attention, especially when it made others uncomfortable. "I mean," he continued, "buying a house like that isn't easy. You must have had some help, right?" My sister smirked. She always thought she was the successful one in the family. "I just don't understand," she said. "Last time we talked, you were struggling." I looked at her and smiled. Yes, I struggled. I struggled while they were partying. I struggled while they were traveling. I struggled while they ignored my calls. What they didn't know was that struggle taught me discipline. "I worked," I said calmly. Uncle David laughed. "Everyone works." That's when my father finally spoke. "David, maybe we should change the topic." But it was too late. Uncle David pulled out his phone. "I even saw property records online," he said. "Same name as yours." My mother looked at me, confused and scared. I stood up slowly. "David," I said, "you really shouldn't believe everything you see online." His smile faded slightly. Because what he didn't know was, the records were real. But they didn't tell the full story. And I was just getting started. Walked toward the window, giving myself a moment before speaking again. The city lights outside reminded me of every sleepless night I survived. "Yes," I said finally. "I bought property." Everyone leaned forward. "But not the way you think." Uncle David crossed his arms. "So how did you afford it?" I turned around and looked straight at him. "I didn't buy one house," I said. "I bought the entire building." Gasps filled the room. My sister's mouth dropped open. My parents stared at me like they were seeing a stranger. "That building," I continued, "has 12 apartments, 3 commercial units, and 0 debt." Silence. Uncle David's face turned red. "I started small," I said. "While you were laughing at me, I was learning. While you were judging, I was investing." My mother whispered, "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked at her gently. "Because no one asked when I had nothing." Uncle David stood up. "You're lying." I smiled. "Check the records again." His hands were shaking now. And for the first time that night, the power in the room shifted. Question. Should I tell them what I had to sacrifice to get here? Uncle David sat back down, suddenly quiet. The same man who loved exposing others now avoided eye contact. I sacrificed everything, I continued. Friends. Sleep. Comfort. I worked double shifts. I lived in tiny apartments. I failed more times than I can count. But I never quit. My sister tried to change the subject. Well, money isn't everything. I nodded. You're right. Respect is. That hit harder than money ever could. My father finally stood up. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. That moment hurt more than it healed. Because I waited years to hear those words. Uncle David cleared his throat. I was just joking earlier. I smiled politely. No, you weren't. Truth makes people uncomfortable. The reunion slowly fell apart. People avoided me now. Not because I failed. But because I succeeded. Jealousy is quiet. Respect is silent. Later that night, my sister messaged me. How did you really do it? I typed one sentence. I stopped explaining myself. Success doesn't need validation. It only needs patience. That night taught me something powerful. The same people who doubt you will one day ask how you did it. And when they do, you don't owe them the story. The reunion ended quietly, but the tension followed everyone home. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly wanted to catch up. Old relatives sent polite messages filled with hidden curiosity. Everyone wanted details now. But one message stood out. It was from Uncle David. I didn't mean to embarrass you, he wrote. I was just surprised. You know how family talks. I stared at the screen for a long time. Family talks. Yes, they talk. But they also remember who they talked down to. I replied calmly. It wasn't embarrassment. It was honesty. Minutes passed. Then he sent another message. So, are you really that successful now? I smiled. That question said everything. Not how are you? Not I'm proud of you. Just numbers. Just status. I'm doing well, I replied. That's all that matters. He didn't respond after that. Later that day, my mother called me. Her voice was softer than usual. We never knew you were carrying so much alone, she said. I didn't blame her. But I didn't excuse it either. I didn't need understanding back then, I said. I needed support. There was silence on the line. That night, I realized something important. Success doesn't change people. It reveals tea. And Uncle David had been revealed. A week later, I visited my building, the one that started all the drama. Tenants waved at me. A small business owner thanked me for renewing his lease fairly. This was the life no one saw. No luxury photos. No loud announcements. Just quiet progress. I thought about the reunion again. About how confidence made people uncomfortable. About how silence confused them more than arguments ever could. Uncle David never asked again. My sister stopped posting comparisons. My parents started listening instead of questioning. Nothing magical happened. No apologies. No dramatic endings. Just distance. And distance was peace. I learned that night that revenge doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like growth. Sometimes it looks like moving forward without dragging anyone with you. The best response to disrespect is not explanation. It's elevation. I locked my office door, looked out at the city, and smiled. Not because they finally noticed me, but because I no longer needed them. Backhand index pointing right. Is silence the strongest form of revenge?